What's up, everybody? Welcome to Hammerdown Motorsports. My name is Steve Fass, and on this beautiful 91-degree day in Pennsylvania, we're headed over to Westy Speed Shop to install our new BMR spring kit, as well as our ZL1 Addons rock guard kit for the 2017 Camaro SS. It's gonna be an awesome time, so let's go. So today so far has been awesome weather. It's been warm all day. It's like 87 degrees now. It was at 91 earlier when I was driving, but just going through the back roads. I got people in a 60s Impala convertible in front of me just enjoying the day, enjoying the cars, and that's what it's all about. It seems that lately I've been using a lot of the nice days to work on the car instead of actually enjoying it, so it's really nice to actually get out and actually have a little bit of fun with it. Got to do that every time we go under a bridge. It's too much fun. Love it. Oh man. Once you have a supercharger on your Camaro, you cannot imagine you lived without it. All right, here we are at Westy's new shop. Pull into the back here and get ready to do some springs. Right, I think we're gonna set up on this lift right here. Just gonna get somebody to guide me on so we don't end up scraping up or any of that kind of good stuff. Westy's got his brand new toolbox all ready to go in here, looking pretty sharp. Let's go see where he's at. What's up?
There he is. Yeah, what's up, again?
Not too much. Saw an opening, so I just pulled in. So the first thing we're gonna do is pull off the wheels. So we're gonna do that right, that. So since we just came off the highway, the brakes and the engine compartment is nice and hot, so we're gonna let that cool down a little bit, and we're gonna do our ZL1 Addons rock guards at this time. So what I've done is just taken a rag and some glass cleaner, just kind of cleaned up the area where the rock guard's gonna go on all four corners, and we're gonna start our installation. So with the kit from ZL1 Addons, you get your hardware, your spacers, washers, and screws, instructions, and your two rock guards for either the front or the rear or both. So we're going to do our rears first. The first thing we're going to do is remove our factory 3 screws from our inner fender well. Okay, so we got our factory screws removed. These are a T15 Torx. Now we're ready to install our new rock guard. So for each side on the rear in your hardware kit, you're going to receive 3 spacers, 3 screws, and 3 washers. Now what you want to do is start from the top with a small spacer. The second screw is also going to receive a smaller spacer, and the bottom screw is going to receive the large spacer. So it's basically a very quick install. You just have to remove your factory screws and install the new ones with the spacers. And just remember, the textured side of the rock guard itself goes towards the outside. Okay, we got both our rear rock guards installed. As you can see with the spacer here, we do have a tiny little bit of a gap, kind of give us a little bit of clearance when things are going to hit this. It's not going to be rubbing against your paint and rubbing through, but all in all, a very nice clean fit. Now for our front rock guards, we have a piece of 3M two-sided tape that comes pre-installed on your rock guard itself, and then there is a hole right here, which is where your push pin is actually going to go. That's from the factory. So now what you're going to do is get a screwdriver, pop the center out of this pin, and it'll be able to come out, and we can get our rock guard in place. So here we have our clip removed. As you can see, there's a little kind of a flat spot here where you can get a screwdriver underneath and get the center popped out. It doesn't have to come all the way out, just enough to release the tension, and it just pulls right out of your inner fender. All right, we got our rock guard in place. We have our factory push pin holding everything where it needs to be, and this way you can kind of just see where it's going to be without removing the protective covering on the tape just yet. And also in the kit, you get 2 per side of these little metal clips, and basically what you're going to do is put this over top of the rock guard, and it's going to clip onto the inside of your fender and keep everything nicely in place. All right, we got our front rock guards installed. As you can see, there's a tiny little bit of a gap here because I do have the ZL1 style side skirts from American Authority, so it does push out the bottom slightly, but we do have a lot of contact area for our two-sided tape, and the metal clips really help everything kind of stay in position, so we should have lots of rock protection for many years to come. So that's it for installing the ZL1 Addons rock guards. Very easy to install, everything's very self-explanatory, and the nicest thing is you get to use all your factory holes, so there's no drilling or anything like that. Makes things seamless and pretty easy to install. So now for the fun part, let's get this thing taken apart and get our new springs installed. So the first thing we're going to do to remove our front strut assembly, there is a wheel speed sensor wire right here. We're going to undo this clip to get this wire out of the assembly that's going to be removed from the car. And then there's a bolt here that's actually holding the brake hose onto the strut, so you want to remove that as well. And then we can start undoing our lower bolts. So now to remove our sway bar link, you have to remove this 18mm nut, and sometimes you can just put an impact on and the nut will come off, but in this case it just wants to spin. So what we're going to do is take a 6mm Allen key and put it in the end of the sway bar link itself, and then we're going to hold the nut with a wrench and basically drive the link through the nut and it'll come off on the back side. So now that we got our nut removed, set that off to the side, and we're able to get our sway bar link out and just kind of set it off to the side like this. Now keep in mind, this is an installation for a non-mag ride car, so if your car does have magnetic ride control, you're going to have to deal with some of the wiring that's associated with that. So being that we're going to need a wheel alignment after we remove our strut assembly, what I did is marked on the strut assembly itself with our spindle, so we can kind of get a gauge of where it was originally and kind of put it back to that, so we're not too far out when we go in for our alignment. So next we're going to take our 24mm socket and our impact, and we're going to remove the nuts from our spindle bolts. So one thing about these bolts is there is splines that go into the spindle itself, so you don't even have to hold this side when you remove the nut. And what you want to do is just spin the nut so it's pretty much flush with the end of the bolt, and then you use a hammer to drive it out. So even though that we removed our ABS sensor from this little clip to kind of give us a little bit more free range when this thing actually kind of moves down, I do recommend removing it completely. It's just a 10mm bolt on the top, and the sensor will pull right out of the spindle assembly. Because when your spindle comes down, there is a bit of tension on this line. I didn't really like that, so just to remove it, pretty simple and easy, and I definitely recommend doing that. Okay, we have the bottom side of our strut assembly nice and free. As you can see, there's nothing that's going to get caught when we try to pull this out of the way. Everything's been disconnected. Another thing with removing the speed sensor itself, it does give you a little bit of real estate to hammer on the end of your bolts. Now just remember to put the nut on the end of the bolt so you don't mess up the threads. So now moving around to the rear, we have our screw jack applying pressure, so our spring pressure has been taken up. So when we do remove our shock bolt and our inner bolt for our lower control arm, the spring isn't going to come shooting out at us, so we can relieve the pressure in a controlled way. So next thing we're going to do is remove this bolt. This is an eccentric bolt, so it does affect your alignment. It is marked here with blue. We did mark it again here with silver, just to make sure that that goes back where it's supposed to go. But again, our alignment's going to be done tomorrow morning, so that's going to be adjusted anyway. So now we're going to get this bolt and our shock bolt removed, and we can remove our spring. Okay, we got our inner bolt for our control arm out, and we got our shock bolt out. It's time to release the pressure and remove our spring. We've got our right rear spring removed. This is our factory spring. The upper isolator came along with it, so just remember which one is the top and which one's the bottom. And we have our new springs right here. As you can see, the BMR springs are a nice red. It's going to look a little bit nicer on the car and give us that look that we want. So now let's fit our isolators and get our spring reinstalled. Now on your new spring, to find the top of the spring is pretty simple. You want your isolator to fit fairly snug and run it in here, so this is touching the rubber, and that's where it should be. If you try to pull on it, it should not come off too easily. If you have it backwards, the isolator fits very loosely, it comes off pretty easily, so make sure everything fits nice and tight, and you'll have the spring in the correct way. Okay, we have our right rear spring in place. Just when you install your lower isolator, there is a little key tab that's got to go into the lower control arm, so just make sure that is in the proper place. And the nut for the shock is actually part of the control arm, so you can just kind of get your bolt started. You can push up on the shock and move it around to try to get everything to line up properly. But I've got the thread started on this bolt. We got our eccentric bolt installed. We're just going to have to line up our marks from before and then tighten everything down. So since we got everything disconnected on the bottom part of our strut assembly and everything is nice and free to move, we're going to go up to the top here as we open the hood, and we're going to remove these 3 top bolts, and that is going to allow our strut assembly to be free from the car. So we got one of our new front springs installed on the strut assembly. Now let's go show you guys how we did that. So to do this, you're going to need a spring compressor, a Westy, and possibly a Mikey.
Yes, I'm here.
But essentially, whatever spring compressor you end up using, you just want to compress the spring so you see it come off of the mount, so you know that it's fully compressed. You're going to remove your top dust cap, and once everything's compressed, you are going to remove the top nut, and then this top bearing assembly and mount will come off, and you're able to remove your spring. So here is our new BMR spring next to our factory spring. As you can see, there are more coils on the BMR. That's going to allow you to keep your tire more flat when you go around a sharp curve. So now once you remove your spring from your strut, you're ready for your new spring. Just want to make sure you line up your isolator with the end of your spring.
Technical word there.
And you're ready for the upper mount.
Because the lock nut will only go for that half second of impact. Other than that, it'll spin the whole rod. So you got to keep that.
So you want to make sure that you get your nut all the way to the bottom where it's supposed to be, and these will stop when they're done. There's no torque spec required. So now we got our assembly together and it's ready to go back into the car. Okay, our strut assemblies are back in. We just need to tighten up our nuts and make sure that our lines are all lined up. And then we're ready to put our wheels back on and see where this thing is going to sit. All right, we got our wheels back on. Car is on the ground. I notice a definite difference in the front already, but once we drive the car for about a week, we're gonna have it settle all out where it's supposed to be and kind of see where our ride height's gonna end up. So that was the ZL1 Addons rock guard installation as well as the BMR spring installation. Using a lift with this is definitely helpful, but you can do it at home if you had to on the ground, but definitely if you have a shop to do this, I would recommend taking it there. So if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Keep that hammer down.